Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the finale of the Ori and the Blind Forest All Skills Tournament. We started back at the beginning of February this year, and now here we are. You are going to see some amazing Ori and the Blind Forest action tonight, but first, we are going to start with a look back over the course of this tournament, and we're going to talk about some of the cool things that have happened, refresh your memories, figure out how we got here, and then we're going to show you some really cool action between these two runners. My name is Vol'jin. I'm here today with Grimelios, JHobbs296, and the Roos is Loose 89. And we're going to be taking you guys on a trip down memory lane. The grand finals are going to start in just about an hour, so make sure you stick around. We will be getting to that, but first we're going to talk a little bit about the tournament. So just to give a quick kind of backstory on this tournament, I had actually been thinking about playing this tournament all the way back from, I want to say around January 2016, and we just never really got enough steam behind it to be able to actually make it take off until this year. But we had a couple basic goals, and I want you to keep these in mind, and as we talk about the tournament, we're gonna kind of, evaluate how we did on these goals. But the basic goals were, we wanted to give Ori speedrunners a chance and a stage on which to shine and show off their stuff. Not everybody's gonna be able to get to do a run at a GDQ, so we wanted to give everybody a chance to show the world this is what the Ori community is. And we also wanted to show something awesome to viewers and produce something that was really cool to watch. The excitement for the tournament was really palpable right from the very beginning, and we had, in fact, 12 personal best times achieved on the day before the group stage of the tournament started. So that should give you, that should give you a pretty good idea of what people were, how much people were chomping at the bit for this tournament. So we're going to start our trip down memory lane at the group stage, which began way back on February 13th with a match between Trojan Dude and Terra. And Hobbs, tell us a little bit about your expectations of the group stage and that match between Trojan and Terra.
Yeah, well, I mean, like Vol'jin said, there were so many PBs right before everything started that all our expectations were almost thrown out the window immediately. But we did have some, and we knew that one group that was going to be crazy exciting was going to be the Ginso group, having Terra and Trojan, whose PBs were somewhat far apart at the beginning of the tournament, but they're kind of the potential we had seen out of both of them over the course of, several PB attempts and just various races were unbelievably close. So we knew the Ginso group was going to be great. We got to kick off the tournament with an exciting close match between Terra and Trojan, as you're seeing some clips from now. And it was just, it kind of exceeded all of our expectations. It was a fantastic way to start off the tournament, and it only led to more close matches in other groups.
Yeah, that's for sure. And you and I had the privilege, of course, of broadcasting that race, and it was really just incredible, the absolutely most perfect way to start the tournament. Just to give you guys a quick understanding of what the group format was like, we took the 36 runners who entered the tournament and we distributed them across groups based on their PBs, so that we had, kind of a number 1 and a number 2 and a number 3 and a number 4, where it was a clear ranking in the group. And we ended up having 9 groups, of course, because that's how division works. But it wasn't just kind of these top runners that really, Trojan Dude and Terra, for example, that really made the group stage. Grim, you want to tell us about something that you kind of found a compelling storyline in the group stage?
I would love to. One of the most exciting things for me about the group stages, apart from just the general hype of the whole thing, which I think is fair to say everyone was excited about the whole tournament, one of the things that was really cool for me, especially as someone who's been with Ori since almost the very beginning, is there were a lot of new names on the in the group lists that I had never seen before. Some runners that I had either never heard of at all, or at least was not very familiar with. I didn't know who they were as people. I didn't know anything about their skills in Ori, and part of that is just there's a lot of people interested in this game, but part of it is that a lot of people picked up the game precisely to participate in this tournament. As you mentioned, there were the 12 PBs on the day before the group started. It was also just exciting because you really had no idea how they were going to improve over time. If you have a worse time in the game because you're newer, it's going to be much easier to improve, and that's exactly what we saw. We'll touch on that later, but yeah, just seeing all the new runners was something that was personally really cool for me.
I agree. And, we saw a lot of different things from some of those new runners too. Some of those runners bringing kind of new ways of thinking to the game, right, that we didn't really think about before. Some of them, of course, like BDB Rufus, for example, showing us some things and making us wonder, is that faster? So, meanwhile, of course, we did have a whole bunch of really close matches. Roos, you had one in particular that you really wanted to talk about, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the ones I was most excited about coming into the group stages was yourself, Voligen, versus Elo Jiminy. One thing that I really liked about this is that it was an interesting nexus point of skill levels, because Elo, always been a very good runner, but I think over the course of the tournament, he has shown some of the biggest improvement and went from a solid runner to like a legitimate threat for world record. And this Vula Elo match happened right as you guys' personal bests were intersecting with each other. It was incredibly close going in, and it determined the results of that group. And unfortunately for you, Vula, Elo did walk away with the win there, but an unbelievably exciting race. Like, it's just, I think pretty much everyone in the Ori community made sure to come watch that because it was such a high stakes match. Lots and lots of high skill demonstrated on both sides.
Yeah, well, it was a lot harder to stomach back at the time, but it kind of was emblematic of the trajectories that each of us were taking. Elo was getting significantly better very quickly. I was just at a plateau at that point. I hadn't quite been able to break through. So yeah, it was definitely one of those times where you really got to see a demonstration of two skilled runners, but at the same time showing off where they were going to be going in the future. On the other end of the spectrum, you were actually, Roos, you were telling us about another match that kind of, I think, surprised people a little bit. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, kind of going back to what Grim said about some of the newer runners, and not just necessarily newer runners, but a lot of the lower seeded ones as well. I think one of the stories of this tournament was that you don't need to be watching a race between high-seeded players to get something exciting. As a matter of fact, some of our favorite events were between some of the lower-seeded runners, and I think one of the highlights of it for me was Mr. Randomson versus Smashfully from my group. The two of them were within just a handful of seconds of each other on PBs when they played each other in group stages, and what makes that even crazier is that both of them PB'd right before the match even started, like the day of. They both had huge multiple-minute PB breakthroughs at the same time, went into it just totally neck and neck, so it really built up a lot of hype for that one, and that one determined the 3rd and 4th seed coming out of that group. Randomson did walk away with that one. The actual final time between the two was not as reflective of how close in skill they actually are as it maybe could have been, but that's just Ori for you. Any given race can be a blowout in one direction or the other.
Yeah, that is for sure. We had a couple other interesting situations in the group stage, and I'm going to talk about just a little bit really quick how the group stage rankings worked based on your record. So if you went 3-0, obviously you won your group. But if you ended up tied with anyone in your group, we had set it up where there was going to be a tiebreaker for that ranking based on your average time in your races. And that actually ended up coming into play a couple times when we didn't really expect it to. One of those times was in the Mount Horu group, which Hetfield, of course, ran away with. But Hobbs, there were 3 other runners in that group, and they had kind of an interesting setup there.
Yeah, it's really weird. Again, this is one of those groups that really surprised us because we expected Hetfield to come out number 1 in that group very strongly. He scheduled all his matches very quickly, too, and put on a very great performance. However, we didn't really expect the remaining 3 players to have in as close matches as they did. What ended up happening is, Het took first seed, and then because of that average time rule, our second seed was actually left up to potentially anyone because all 3 of them ended up beating each other. Everybody in that group went 1 and 2, and other than Hetfield. And it started off with Rufus taking out Odie, BDB Rufus take out Odeon at the beginning of it, and then Odeon came back and took back Rasmus. He like went and took out Rasmus, and then Rasmus came and took out Rufus. So we had to go to an average time to determine our seeding from that. And it really was one of those things where a group that we didn't expect to have a whole lot of, close excitement behind it, maybe more excitement about how well individuals could improve, ended up having that really great excitement in that second seed slot. And the coolest thing, too, to me, is that wasn't even the only group that had that problem. Or not even problem, but had that awesome factor to it.
That's right. One of the other groups was Sunken Glades. The 4 people in that group were Raziel, Brynhold, Cheese Lover, and Fance. And the real interesting bit out of that group comes out of Raziel, Brynhold, and Cheese. The reasoning being that, as you mentioned earlier, the format of our group stages was such that every single match mattered. Well, I guess if you're 3-0, you won your group. But otherwise, if you had ties in the win-loss, it came down to average time. So what happened in that group is that Raziel was and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but Raziel was the favorite to win out of that group initially. But the very first match between Raziel and Brynhold, there was an upset. And Brynhold walked away with the victory. So fast forward a few more matches, and I won't go into every single detail, but Raziel ended his group stage matches at 2-1. When he finished, Brynhold was at 2-0. So there was a question that if Brynhold were to win his final match against Cheese, Bryn would be at 3-0 and walk away with the win, which means that Raz was in a situation where, having no control over the outcome of the race, he had to wait to see what was going to happen, because if Brynhold won, and Brynhold was a heavy favorite to win against Cheese, he would be 3-0. But we got another upset, and Cheese won his match against Brynhold, which left Fant at 0-3, unfortunately, in the group, but otherwise a 3-way 2-1 tie. And the result of that group did end up going down to average race time as well. And that, I think, is one of my favorite things about this tournament, is how that format of the group stage was handled, such that you can have excitement in these races, even when it might, as Roos mentioned, not be between the number 1 and 2 in the world or something like that.
Unbelievably exciting. That was just a fun one. I know that I was one of the commentators got to kind of play that up as a group that might be exciting, and then had no expectations of that kind of thing actually happening. So it was definitely super fun when it did.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that might not even be appreciated is that at the end of that group stage, when Raziel ended up placing first in that group because of having been saved basically by Cheese, because his average time was still very good, that may have helped really solidify his path forward to the round of 8, just by virtue of having a slightly different draw in the bracket stage. So little things like that were pretty important in the group stage at different times. But we also have one kind of other little topic that we want to talk about from the group stage, and that was memes. So we have some we have some fun runners in the Ori community. We have people who are really pretty funny and fun-loving, and they like to just have a good time. And we do races with one another all the time outside of the actual tournament format, but we also, sometimes kind of let that hilarity bleed over into the tournament. So we had a couple races during this tournament that were a little bit silly. We had Roos versus Epic Cat, where it was kind of hilarious from the start with just all sorts of shenanigans. They finished by doing a save drop in Mount Horu, which is like, who does that? That's not faster. We also had Hobbs versus Defu, which I know is kind of a sore point for kind of the viewers and the commentators a little bit. And I guess I'll kick off the discussion right here with Hobbs and just ask, kind of what was the discussion that you had with Defu, and how do you feel in general about that kind of that meme setup during a race?
So we were actually inspired by the legends of the Roos is Loose and Epic Cat.
Oh, no.
From their legendary race.
Setting a bad example.
we
Just
were very
don't
much-
ever follow my example. That's a bad idea.
We were very much inspired by them though, because they were able to kind of, put their mark on the group stage, right? We knew there were going to be so many matches in the group stage, and some of them were going to be close, some of them weren't, but they found a way to take one that they weren't really sure who was going to win, and they wanted to add that extra level of wonder to it. And so Hobbs, that's me, Steffu and I had decided, like, okay, well, what's just like one kind of joke we could throw in, just something small, and then somehow the line came out of, what if we left forlorn, forever forlorn? And it turned out to be a lot bigger than we thought it was going to be, but we basically just decided, okay, we're going to go all the way up to forlorn and then not actually go in. We're just going to give it the biggest tease on the planet, and we thought it'd be really fun. And just kind of, Roos said it during the match, right? It was kind of just our way to kind of leave our group, our mark on the group stage.
Well, you certainly did that, and so did Roos and Bob. And I mean, that's, like it or not, that's part of the tournament. It's fun, like one way or the other. It's fun that we have a group of people who are, friends enough that in a tournament situation, even, they can make that sort of like agreement with one another and both count on each other to actually do it. I mean, you could have just not gone to forlorn, right? And then Steffu would have been an idiot,
right? But the best part about it is that out of that, joking nature, we ended up coming up with new strats, and we'll get into that a little bit later in the show. But that dumb race ended up coming up with some new strats.
We have a really good clip here that we'll just play as kind of its own thing from a race between Roos and Smashy. Just enjoy this. He's disabling Sticky.
That is the ultimate improv strat. My God.
Always scan this section.
I am just in stitches right now. That's going to give Smashy another 5 or 10 seconds of advantage. Unfortunately, the game does pause when it's not in focus. There is actually a DLL that we provide in the community, which its sole change to the game is that. So we don't have audio on the restream here, but I can just imagine in my head the voice going, "Start magnifier," and
always scan this section.
Even when not trying to meme, Roos somehow finds a way.
I'm noticing a trend in who's involved in these meme videos here. So, funny note, approximately the amount of time I lost to these various tech-related issues is the amount that I did not PB by on this run. So I was a little bit haunted by always scan this section for a couple of days after this one.
Oh my goodness.
Fantastic.
But to move on a little bit from just kind of the overall group stage overview, we do want to also kind of say that, there was some silliness, there was some fun had, but we also had some runners, all the runners really were extremely serious about their play, and we had a lot of really solid play from a lot of really solid people. And Roos, you're going to tell us a little bit about that, right?
Yeah, I think the one I'm about to mention is something that pretty much everyone is going to remember from this event. What ended up being one of the most awesome runs of the event was Meldon versus Rivid. And the reason this was so cool was because both of these players, a little bit on the newer side, but put in a ton of work for this tournament, and when it came time for these two guys to go head to head, they really pulled out all the stops. I mean, I think Meldon especially, were all surprised with some of the tech that he pulled out, including going for and nailing fast stompless, which was a big part of what caught him up. Rivid took a pretty early big lead, but Meldon managed to claw his way back in with things like fast stompless, going for tough tricks like Kuro cutscene skip, even though they unfortunately did not get it. Getting through Misty very quickly, and especially like the late game approach back to Light Grenade. And then finally it resulted in both of them just being basically tied going into the final Kuro escape. And when they both finished and crossed the finish line, they were less than a minute apart, but both of them had PB'd together in the race. And that's just like an absolutely mind-blowing thing to get to see. It's special enough for one person to have their best run in a race like this, but both people at the same time, how can you possibly ask for anything better? And I think we've got a nice clip from this match to watch if you guys want to take a look.
Do some dashes.
I think we've got it. We've got it. 4107. 2
2
second
PBs in
PB.
one race. All right. this is pretty amazing. I'm very glad that I was here to watch this.
This was an absolutely amazing race. I can't believe how good this was, how close this was the entire time. They're leap-flopping around. Absolutely excellent execution from both players. Double PB in the same race. That's the first time we've seen.
So, the ongoing, progress of different runners' skills and PBs and things was kind of a hilarious point for us as the the tournament organizers, right? So Grim, we had that questionnaire. Well, how well did that questionnaire work out for us?
It worked out great for like a week until everyone got better, and then it became really outdated. For anyone who doesn't know what it is we're talking about, to help out us lowly commentators, we had all the participants, all the runners fill out a questionnaire asking questions to help commentators. Things like, you're running on KBM or controller or hybrid, what tricks are you going to be going for, when did you start running Ori, those kinds of things. And at first that document was very, very useful, especially because, as mentioned earlier, there were a lot of newer runners that, I can certainly say personally, if you asked me to commentate on someone like Kyrfell or someone early on, I remember because that was one of the examples, I didn't know anything about that person. The questionnaire is very helpful, but as the tournament advanced over a few weeks, or even shorter in some cases, people got better at the game. They started adopting maybe 4 health rather than 5 health, or 3 health rather than 4. They started going for extra energy spells. They started going for tricks like fast stompless or stomp cancels, whereas before they never went for those things. And so the questionnaire, I found the whole thing kind of funny. The questionnaire very quickly became obsolete short of very basic information like, are they a KBM runner or not? After that, you really couldn't rely on it anymore. And Jesus, to go even further, after a while, you couldn't even rely on the leaderboards because people were PBing so often that they just didn't bother submitting because they knew they'd probably PB again the next day. It was just really incredible to see that much improvement.
In fact, to play off one of those last things you just mentioned, sometimes you couldn't even necessarily count on the KBM versus controller info because some runners changed during the tournament.
That's true.
Well, playing off that, talking about runners learning new strats, Hobbs, a lot of runners did really incorporate a lot of new things into their repertoire over the course of the tournament, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We already kind of hinted at the fact that some new strats came out during the tournament, but even before that, a lot of runners just started adopting existing strats that they weren't going to start with. From a personal standpoint, I wasn't planning on doing the fast stompless trick, and a lot of people weren't planning on doing fast stompless. That almost everybody ended up doing it in the end because it just became this, necessity out of the amazing play of everybody else throughout the tournament. I know Terra, for one, was somebody who thought it was going to be a judgment call for him whether he'd go for it or not. And by the end of the tournament, he was doing unbelievable strats that are way harder than fast stompless. So some of that, Sigma started picking up new little tricks here and there from other runners. Again, we talked about how a little trick came out of the race from me and Staffu. Sigma kind of adapted something into an experience route for him. We had lots of people just learning things from other runners. Fant showed us how to use charge jumps on our way to Light Grenade instead of having to deal with this Baneling, and a lot of runners ended up picking that up. So just very cool to see the progress from so many runners, and also the help that all the racers were giving each other, whether it be directly or indirectly, but everybody helping each other just get better at the game.
Agreed. And one of the things that I think it really shows about our community and that we've really seen over the course of this tournament is that it's really a community in every sense of the term. And we've seen runners like Rufus and many other runners come up with different things that we just haven't really thought of before. But as we've kind of shared that experience over the course of the tournament, we've been able to kind of learn from one another. And the cool thing about that is it hasn't just applied to runners that are participating in the tournament. It has also applied to runners who are brand new or just didn't enter for whatever reason. So we've seen the total runs on the leaderboard, the number double since the announcement of the tournament. It used to be short of 30. if I recall correctly, and now it's at 64, which is absolutely crazy.
Wow.
And the best part is this is all coming from kind of the grassroots level, so to speak. Like, if you think of it as like, oh, it's just the top runners like getting better and better. No, actually, it's really not. The world record has dropped by a grand total of 10 seconds since the time the tournament started. But what has happened is all these new runners and all these, lower ranked runners have just massively improved, and it's been amazing. The total improvement of all tournament participants of their PBs over the course of the tournament has been 2 hours, 53 minutes, and 47 seconds.
That is incredible.
Ludicrous.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's just such a silly number. Like, oh my gosh.
Over almost 3 hours, rather. That's insane.
Indeed. So we're going to move on a little bit, and we're going to talk about the bracket stage a bit. The bracket, of course, as we mentioned, was seeded based on the results of the group stage. I think we did mention that every runner in the group stage made the bracket, so that was a cool thing that we did in this tournament that I really liked. It allowed everyone to kind of have their opportunity to get their feet wet in the group stage, and then they had the opportunity in the bracket to have a single elimination situation where they had to win or it was over, and every runner got that opportunity. The seeding took place we bracketed everybody by their record, so all the first placers in the groups went at the top of the bracket, and then second placers and third placers. You get the idea. But as a result, there were some, kind of weird positionings because Trojan took first in his group, so even though he's not necessarily the fourth best player in the world, he got the fourth seed in the bracket because he had very good average time and he had a 3-0 record. And, some other kind of weird seeding things happened. And Hobbs, as a result, we kind of had some cases where there were matches where maybe the seeding didn't quite match how good the runners really were, right?
Yeah, it was really cool because we would have these matches like Roos versus Trojan, where Roos was a 13th or 14th seed runner in the terms of the tournament, and Trojan was a 4th seed. And yet their race was unbelievably close, and we knew it was going to be close, kind of a lot of the time. It just so happened that that's kind of the way the groups fell. Another one that was unbelievably close, despite the kind of seeding difference, was Lucidus versus Terra. And that was, Lucy was like a 7th seed or so, and Terra was, I believe, 10th seed. But both of them had PB times that were closer to like 4th and 5th seed in the course of the tournament. So it was really cool and an unbelievably close match. And Terra's 10th seed was really just because he was in a group with Trojan. It's the kind of cool things that were able to come out from our group stage, bracket stage format.
Agreed. We also had some other interesting things happen in the more standard seeded races. For example, between Hobbs, yourself, and Isex, as well as between Brynhold and Randomson, we had some surprising upsets where, in your case, it was a 9 seed versus a 20 whatever.
25th, I believe.
That one, yeah, that number. And, in Bryn's case, there was a similar kind of magnitude of difference. And these both kind of went to show that anything can happen in a tournament situation. I'm not going to try to dwell on it, of course, too much for you. Obviously, that one probably stings because that's what knocked you out of the tournament. But just in general, we know that you had some issues with your controller during your race with Isex. And I wanted to ask, in that single elimination situation where it's win or go home, and you have that sort of thing pop up, what happens to you mentally? Like, where is your mind at during that?
Well, that's kind of one of the aspects you don't really think about when it comes to competitive anything, right? There's the aspect of you need to play the game well, but there's also the aspect of what other problems could be happening. In traditional sports, you could have just had an injury lately, or you could have a lot of stuff on your mind. You have to worry about that distracting you. And when it came to the Warrior Tournament, for me, I had a technical difficulty, and the technical difficulties really only marred the run, 4 or 5 times. However, it was that mental aspect that I couldn't get over, and I normally like to kind of sit down and focus in real hard, and it kept pulling me out of focus. And it's one of those aspects where you just can't you just can't plan for that, right? And you need to be ready for anything when it comes to a tournament scenario.
Yeah, that's for sure. Brynhold and Randomson having kind of a similar situation, not in the sense that either of them had any technical difficulties pop up, but just it wasn't really expected for Randomson to be that close behind Bryn, and he just kind of was the whole race. And you see, of course, the clip from the Ginso tree where they were practically neck and neck. They traded the lead multiple times in that escape. That was an incredibly good race. Speaking of incredibly good races, we do have some other ones in that round of 32. And Grim, you got to participate in one of those.
I did. We spent most of this bracket portion so far talking about upsets and you can get seedings that are deceptive. I'm going to talk about my own race against Red Room. That was my first bracket match. And that one wasn't deceptive at all. Coming out of the group stages, her and my average times were tied down to the second. So the average times, clearly our tournament performance had been very, very close. And also our PBs. My PB was slightly faster, but only on the order of, I think, less than 20 seconds. So in Ori terms, that's basically tied. It's very, very close. It was also kind of interesting going into that match because statistics and times and averages aside, we are both people that have been with Ori for a long time, but not recently. Like before the tournament started, I hadn't been speedrunning Ori. I had been speedrunning other things and, I don't know, doing whatever else you do with your life when you're not running Ori. Red was in a similar boat where she had been busy with her own life and just hadn't actively been running the game. And both of us came back, but I think that was a very, very good matchup for a lot of reasons. And I ended up pulling away with the victory, but not by too much. There were several points in that race where it got very, very close, and that's an example of where the seedings kind of worked out perfectly.
Well, thinking of matches in that vein, there was another pretty good one in the round of 32, and that was between the 14 seed and the 19 seed, Monkley and Cheese Lover. And Roos, what can you tell us about that match?
Oh man, what could I not tell you about that match? Going into it, I think that was easily one of the most hotly anticipated matches of the bracket because the two of them were very, very close in times, and also like right at that skill level where suddenly players are starting to pull off things that are very, very impressive. So we were not 100% sure what we were going to see out of these two guys. And another interesting thing about it was sort of similar to that Vula Elo match. Monkley sort of started off considered the favorite because he had the better time, but Cheese was practicing more actively and was kind of on a more aggressive pace of improvement. So it was going to be a question of can Monkley rely on his previously better times and pull a win out, or will Cheese, with his more aggressive practice schedule, be able to pull out the win? And we literally didn't know almost the entire way through. As you can see through in this clip here, Cheese and Monkley were frame for frame tied most of the way through Sorrow Pass here, all the way up through that rocket jump. Cheese did end up kind of pulling ahead midway through Misty, but this is, as far as matches that were incredibly highly hyped and lived up to it, this is one of the standouts of this entire tournament, in my opinion. It was just an absolutely mind-blowing thing to watch.
That was one of those matches where when you're sitting there and doing your bracket predictions, you click on one of them, it's Monkley's going to take it. He's got the better time. And then 2 seconds later, you're like, no, Cheese is going to take it, right? He's been practicing more. No, I think it's going to be Monkley, man. I think, you just went back and forth constantly. It was insane.
I don't remember the exact numbers, but for the challenge brackets, weren't the number of predictions for each runner only separated by like a couple? It was something like 18 to 15 or something like that.
Ooh, and that's a question that I might be able to shortly answer with a quick click. It was 14 out of 27 predictions favored Cheese Lover, who was the eventual winner of the match.
So they were separated by one vote. Holy cow.
Yes, it was complete madness. But that said, one of the closest races so far in the entire tournament was actually decided by a brand new trick. And we have a video of this for you. Which we'll get momentarily.
bear with us for a moment while we're
which
getting it there.
isn't used, period. Grenade, light grenade.
Yes. And now, just like you have a little bit of a, you have a little bit of a thing, a soft spot for your heart for climb. I've got a little bit of a pet project of my own to try and find something to use light grenade for. I thought I had found one for exiting Blackroot here a while back, but unfortunately it turned out to both be absurdly difficult and not faster at all. So we're still trying to figure that one out.
In all seriousness, there was some pretty substantial new tech that was found.
We'll be seeing these runners use light grenade, a skill that was previously useless, in order to hopefully not soft lock their game and instead save a lot of time.
That's right. They're going to stand on, or they're going to perch on the wall at the end. They're going to aim a wall charge jump. They're going to cancel it before they press the jump input with a light grenade. This is very position specific as well as timing specific with the frame perfect input. If he messes it up, it could soft lock his game. Here we go.
Wow.
First try. That is successful. He is going to go away with the victory here in this race. So he needs a precise position, precise aim, precise timing. It's frame perfect.
He fails at the first try, but he does recover, and he's going to be trying it again. He's still ahead of Sigma. He doesn't get it the second time. He's going to be coming
Sigma's
for it now.
coming in.
Sigma has 2 attempts at this, and he is on it at the same time.
Sigma
the third time. Sigma takes the race on grenade jump. Oh my god! Wow! What a beautiful. I'll listen to that ending over and over and over again. It was a blast to commentate that race.
That finish with the oh my god.
I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I was watching that from my computer chair, and literally when Sigma got that grenade jump, I flew up out of it and was just yelling at the top of my lungs. That was a photo finish in every sense of the word.
I think I yelled too, yeah.
I did the same, and you could hear it on the stream.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, grenade jump, brand new trick invented during the course of the tournament. Not by a tournament participant, it was by a community member named Hitachi Hex, who I actually don't know what his PB is because he hasn't submitted it, but I believe he has completed an all skills run, and he came up with this trick, and that kind of segues us into our next topic of we've had some new tech come up over the course of this tournament and really kind of changed the way we've played. And it started way back at the beginning with, the fifth energy, right? Roos, what can you tell us about that fifth energy and kind of how that evolved?
So the fifth energy was originally something that people were theorizing about in order to get safety for the race, because, with 4 energy, to go fast, all of that energy in the late game is being used for tricks. That doesn't leave you any room for safety saves. So there's a pretty easy to get 5th energy cell that people were talking about grabbing just to be able to drop a few extra safety saves. But given that this is Ori and difficult tricks will expand to use up all available energy, we have since found out that 5 can actually be the faster way to do it if you're willing to do a few difficult tricks. And so now, we see the majority of runners going for that 5th energy. Sometimes for the tournament, they're still taking it for the safety, but even PB attempts go for 5 now in order to get the fastest speed possible.
That's right, and we also, of course, had grenade jump as, the biggest new trick, really, in terms of total time save. It's 35 seconds, and Grim, of course, you had the pleasure of casting the first 2 matches which featured this trick in the tournament. And of course, waking up to the thousands of messages in Discord about it. Tell us a little bit about how that went for you, maybe, and also for the community as a whole.
Sure. Well, for me, it was interesting. I was already out of the tournament. I'd already lost to a robot named Hetfield by that point. But not the only time I've woken up to thousands of messages in the Ori Discord. Grenade jump is a fascinating trick, as you mentioned, discovered by Hitachi Hex. I think actually a few days before we really found, I say we, I had no part in it, but the community found some really nice applications for it. It saves 35 seconds at the end of the run. And it's really cool. It's one of those tricks where this is a speed run and your overall goal is to find ways to go fast. But as soon as I learned about grenade jump, my first reaction was, really? It's like, you're going to throw this trick, this frame perfect trick that has the potential to soft lock your game at the very end of the run. And if you mess up, you have to fight against Kuro. It's fascinating because it saves time. It also has applications, not just at the end of the run, but earlier in the run. But it's sort of funny. You don't actually dislike the trick or anything. It just adds another element of difficulty to the end of the run. From a casting perspective, though, I'm lucky that I got to help out commentating the first race where we got to see it. But it's really interesting because in the past, most top tier runners, and at the point where this trick was discovered, all of our remaining runners were top tier. Top tier runners usually won't miss fish strats, or if they don't go for fish strats, you usually won't see deaths or any big mistakes in the escape, which means that whoever's ahead at door rope is probably going to take the win. Not the case anymore, as very strongly evidenced by the clip you're seeing between Sigma and Elo. So, I mean, I could ramble on about this trick for a very, very long time. I won't, but it's a really, really fascinating trick. I'm happy it was found, but it adds some complexity to the end.
Indeed, and not everyone's a super huge fan of it. Of course, having a frame perfect trick at the end of your run, not the best time in the world. And of course, if you miss it, you will also not get the best time in the world. But you know, on the lighter side, we also have some differences in terms of XP routing, and that has been kind of the focus of community discussion a little more recently. Hobbs, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so one of the things I've always liked in speedruns are kind of the small things, right? That all the 1 second time saves that build up to be 35 seconds, as well as being tied with those frame perfect tricks that save you 35 seconds. And one of those kind of cool things was something I hinted at a couple times already. We're finally there. The new experience route that was inspired by Stafu during the race where he and I went to Forlorn. So Sigma saw that. He saw that what Stafu did was actually pick up some experience on his way into Misty, something that we had not done previously. It wasn't something that runners did, but he did it so that way he could get a level up off of the Misty mini boss at the very end of Misty, so he could make a safety save. Now, Sigma saw this and he was like, "Whoa, maybe we should be leveling up there instead of getting kind of a random level up later that we don't really care much about," and decided to kind of reroute all these uses of Charge Dash, taking that 5th energy route that Roos was talking about and turning it from something that was a safety strat for races, and taking that and turning it into unbelievable speed, making that 5th energy route just as fast, if not faster, than the 4th energy. And it was unbelievably cool. On top of the experience route that changed, we've also had some very recent changes with experience and with what skills we level, being instead of picking up Magnet early, as we've done for a long time, a lot of runners are now picking up Quick Flame early. And I believe it's something we'll be seeing in our finals matches tonight.
Yeah, almost certainly. Both of these runners have been working on that new route, so we'll be sure to see it. In the meantime, we are going to try to wrap up our retrospective right here. There's been so much cool stuff that's happened over the course of the group stage and the bracket stage. I could not even hope to cover all of it in a single show, but I hope that we've given you guys just kind of a trip down memory lane, help you remember some of the cool parts. Kind of the wrap-up question here is, did we hit our goals for this tournament? Did we do what we set out to accomplish? And the answer to that question is hell yeah, we did. This tournament was a stupendous, magnificent, tremendous success. There's not enough superlative words to describe it. All of the races we managed to get broadcast on the Speed Gaming or SRL channels, except for one, due to a massive, unavoidable confluence of races. But otherwise, every single race ended up on the big channels, and we got at least 2 commentators on every single one. We have some fantastic commentary that has happened over the course of this tournament. And of course, the races have not disappointed at all. And we've had huge community growth. So it has truly been a pleasure.
All right, not sure why you got cut off there, but
I'm not sure either, but we'll try to finish that thought.
It's been a pleasure.
It's truly been a pleasure. It has truly been a pleasure, and I'm really proud of what we've accomplished here. So we are going to bring the retrospective to a close, and we're going to be on pace to start the finals. Just be aware, in around 35 to 40 minutes, we're looking at around 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, so around 35 or 40 minutes from now. So stick around. For now, that we are wrapping up the retrospective. Before we go on to the finals, we want to leave you all with a quick video tribute to our runners, who are the ones who made this tournament what it is. Enjoy.